a cluster is like, if you imagine like a spider web, there's all these pieces of thoughts connected together. You have 3.5 million of those on average, so the number is huge that are negative, okay? And these are running around in your brain at any one time. So those of you who may have, let's say, ADD tendencies or a really busy brain, with the thought shifting, you'll find that your brain is going to settle down and quiet down, because you don't even really realize how busy it is until those things are gone. It's almost like you become accustomed to that level of noise, and then all of a sudden some of the noise goes away and you just go, wow, what happened to that? Where did all that go? And you don't even realize it was there. We get used to living like that. So what happens is there's 3.5 million of these things, of these negative things that are in there. And because there's so many of them, and because so many of them came in so early, and then there's a challenge just even being able to identify them by traditional means, okay? So any method to be able to get rid of these things that requires you to identify it, first of all, may be difficult, and that's part of the service that I'm providing for you tonight, is to help you identify that. And then then to be able to get rid of it would require, first of all, that they could get rid of it, but secondly, it would require that they were able to identify these early things, and they would still have to do it one by one. And with 3.5 million negative things, that just becomes a prohibitive amount of work. In fact, if, let's say, one of the common ways that people get rid of things are by focusing on affirmations or visualizations. And if you only had 3 million negative thoughts instead of 3.5 million, and if you worked on 100 of those a day, it would take you 2,136 years to get rid of all those, because it takes 26 days each to overwrite that neural pathway. So if you could focus on 100 things at a time every day and do it religiously for the next 26 days, you would find that you'd be able to overwrite those 100 things. And you'd have to continue doing that for the next 2,136 years to be able to get rid of all that negativity, if you only had 3 million negative thoughts, and most people have more. Okay? And when I measured this, when I began measuring the number of negative thoughts, and then I did the math on that, I said, okay, no wonder it's taking so long for us to get rid of stuff. No wonder. And it started putting some things in place and kind of filling in some of the blanks. So what happens is, besides the sheer number, the things that come in early on, like about 0 to age 3, are not actually stored as a thought. They're more like an emotion, and they're stored as what I call the idea of a thought. And when I say stored, let me be really clear. These things are physically stored in your body. So the negative thoughts are in your brain, the negative neural pathways are in your brain, the negative emotions are physically in your body. That's why you feel them in your body. This also contributes to things like disease and stuff like that I probably won't talk about tonight, but I've had prior calls where I talked about that. So they're physically stored in your body. And up until about the age of 3, it's stored as an emotion without a thought, because you didn't really have language back then. So the other thing that makes it so difficult to identify these things is, someone may try to find out from you what the issue is, or you may go to talk therapy, or you may try to identify it or uncover it on your own, but you'll just have this nagging emotion there, this nagging feeling, or this knowing that something's wrong, but not really be able to do anything about it, because you didn't have words then, and you can't put words to it. So a lot of times what happens, what I'll do for people in answering your questions, is I'll actually put words to that particular issue, and in doing that, all of a sudden it's like, okay, now you can articulate it. But that's also another reason why it makes it very difficult for us to identify a lot of this negative conditioning. So much of it comes in so early, there's just such a sheer volume of it, and we don't remember a lot of it, and we didn't really have words, even if we do remember, to be able to articulate those emotions that we're feeling. So that's part of what I noticed. That's what I've discovered about what's going on, the sheer volume of things that are out there, and how many things are getting in people's way. And then as I searched for a better way to deal with that, I was literally given this thought shifting process and quantum thought shifting. And again, the difference being thought shifting, well, let me explain it to you for a second, because I may recommend either thought shifting or quantum thought shifting depending upon the issue and depending upon how much negativity is involved and things like that. So if it's thought shifting and removing a particular issue, that still removes on the first pass about 27 to 50% of all your negative conditioning. To give you an idea of that relative to other systems that are out there, I'm working with the lady now. She's been a therapist for 40 years. She's been working on herself for 40 years. I measured her negativity. It was 97.5%. So after 40 years, she hadn't really gotten, I mean, she might have gotten rid of something because maybe it started out as 96 or 97, but she hadn't appreciably gotten rid of anything. I could tell you story after story after story of people for whom that's true. And it's fascinating to me because I've literally done thousands of these measures since 2003. And sometimes people will say to me, oh, well, that's not me. I've done all this work. I'm good. I'm fine. And then I measure their negativity and they're shocked. So that's just kind of the nature of the beast because so much of it is hidden. Okay? So when I'm talking about removing it with thought shifting, what happens is I'm able to remove that particular issue that's getting in your way, but because I'm able to go so early, and because of the nature of negativity, what happens is wherever it starts, then it just keeps picking up more negativity from that point. So it's kind of like if you imagine a snowball. The snowball's kind of rolling downhill and it's picking up steam. So because I go back to the earlier point of where it actually originated, that a lot of times will bring a lot with it. And I actually worked with a lady. She was a heroin addict, and she was about to die. And I'm convinced that if I hadn't worked with her that day that she would have died. She walked up to me in a healing seminar, and I knew that she was withdrawing from heroin. And I'm also able to help people with their withdrawals from any kind of substance, whether it's things like depression medication or illegal substances and street drugs and things like that. And they typically go away within 1 to 2 hours. So it's pretty quick. And it's all done remotely. So I worked with her. I removed her heroin withdrawals. I removed the reason for her original addiction in the first place, but because she was homeless and I couldn't do all the follow-up and teach her how to live in that space, which I'll talk about in a second, I didn't remove everything. So that accounted for 78% of all of her negativity. So sitting there with her for not even an hour, I was able to remove 78% of all of her negativity and her heroin withdrawals. And what was really fun about that was I got to watch her go from walking around, from being shivering and freezing. If any of you guys have ever seen somebody in heavy drug withdrawal, shivering, freezing, cold, they have these dark circles under their eyes, and I got to watch her going from that to within 2 hours walking around like a normal person. So that was a blessing to me to get to see that in person, because usually I work with people on the phone. So that's the most that I've ever removed, and hers was the thing that she actually came in with, which I call soul debris. Okay, so it was an energy that was with her really since she entered the planet, which is not the time that she was born, but the time that she was conceived. And because it was such an early energy and it had taken on such a snowball effect, it had picked up a lot of stuff, and so it had heavily contributed to her addiction. So now let me talk about for a second, I said I would talk about why I didn't shift her all the way in that setting. And the reason is because what I found is when I'm removing this negativity, it's going out of your subconscious. Well, when it's going out of your subconscious, your conscious thoughts are becoming more powerful. So for example, if I'm removing 50% of all your negativity, your conscious thoughts, or your subconscious is now cleared out 50%, and that means your conscious thoughts are now 50% more powerful. And because of that, you just need to know how to live in that space. I finally have come to realize, because I'm just not operating like anybody else, other people out there, I forgot to talk about this, let me talk about this too. One of the importance of getting to the root cause. So one of the things that I'm able to do is get more to the root cause of the issue. Well, the reason this is important is because if you imagine an onion, there's all these layers around the onion, right, like the outer skin. And what's happening with most of the systems out there today is they're literally working cell by cell by cell around the outer edge of the onion. And because that's where they're working, they're able to remove very little of what's there, as I've already said. And I've measured this. I have comparisons on my sites about different systems, and people will ask me, what is this, compared to? And it's compared to removing things one by one the way that they typically work versus in their system, and how long it takes for them to be able to remove things if they actually remove it at all. Some systems like therapy, for example, only help you identify something, but they don't necessarily remove anything. So because of that, you can still be consciously aware that something's happening, but because of this automatic negative response, you're going to continue reacting, another way unless by repetition you override